Today we're convening a public hearing on the acute and rapidly evolving threat posed by foreign commercial spyware. Public reports have shined a bright light on the robust market for powerful spying tools that are sold on the open market, essentially offering sophisticated signals intelligence capabilities as an end-to-end service. The most sophisticated of these tools provide zero-click access to all the information stored on a mobile phone, laptop, or other internet-connected device. Emails, photographs, messages sent via encrypted apps, even the microphone on a device, literally nothing is out of reach. This spyware could be used against every member of this committee, every employee of the executive branch, every journalist or political activist, every American citizen, every citizen of the world with an electronic device. And aside from periodically updating the software on our devices, there's little that you can do currently to protect yourself from being targeted and compromised. The availability of these tools in the hands of governments who previously lacked robust surveillance capabilities is truly a game changer for U.S. national security, which makes it an issue of particular concern to this committee. It's also a game changer for autocratic regimes that are looking for new means to surveil, intimidate, imprison, or even kill dissidents, journalists, and others who they view as a threat. In 2021, a group of news organizations and researchers acting under the banner of the Pegasus project sounded a public alarm about the potential for these hacking tools to be abused. Their starting point was a leaked list of more than 50,000 phone numbers that had been targeted by governments using spyware sold by one company, NSO Group. Since that disclosure, a steady stream of disturbing reports has revealed that thousands of journalists, civil society activists, and many others have had their devices compromised by NSO's tools. One such individual, Karine Kanimba, is here with us today. She will share the consequences of being targeted with spyware and what that has meant for her family. Ms. Kanimba's experience should serve as a stark warning of the future that awaits us if countries and the private sector do not band together to act decisively to rein in foreign spyware companies. But the threat is not limited to people only like Ms. Kanimba. It is also a threat to millions of Americans and others around the world, and particularly U.S. government personnel serving overseas. Late last year, multiple news organizations reported that mobile phones used by U.S. diplomats in Uganda had been compromised by NSO's Pegasus tool. It is my belief that we are very likely looking at the tip of the iceberg and that other U.S. government personnel have had their devices compromised, whether by a nation-state using NSO services or tools offered by one of its lesser-known but equally potent competitors.
Ranking members, members of the committee, thank you for welcoming me to speak with you today. My name is Karine Kanimba. I am the youngest of 6 children of Tatiana and Paul Rusesabagina, and I am an American citizen. The United States welcomed my family when we sought refuge, and we found safety and security within its borders. I am a proud graduate of Northwestern University, and until 2 years ago, I was working in a job I loved in finance based out of New York City. In August of 2020, everything changed. Nearly 700 days ago, my father was lured from our family home in San Antonio, Texas, by an intelligence operation directed by the Rwandan government. He was kidnapped in Dubai and then illegally rendered to Kigali via private jet chartered by the office of the Rwandan president. He was tortured, subjected to a sham trial, and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The United States government has designated him as wrongfully detained, and the House has passed 2 resolutions already in support of my father and calling for his immediate release. Our family is extremely grateful to the House and to Congressman Castro and Congresswoman Kim for leading the efforts of this resolution. In 2021, I became the victim of NSO's Pegasus spyware. I was born in Rwanda, just prior to the 1994 genocide that made me an orphan. My birth parents were among the first victims of nearly 1 million people killed during the genocide, leaving my sister Anaïs and I orphans. Anaïs is a graduate of Georgetown University here in Washington, D.C., and she's here with me today. My father, Paul Rusesabagina, is a hero of the genocide. In 1994, he was the manager of the hotel in Kigali, and he gave refuge to 1,268 people in his hotel, risking his life every single day to push back the militia that was waiting outside, and not a single person was killed. Once the killings finally ended, my adoptive parents, Tatiana and Paul, heard that our parents had been killed, and they searched for Anaïs and I, found us in a refugee camp, raised us, and loved us as their own, along with my new brothers and sisters, Lise, Roger, Diane, and Tresor. My mother, Tatiana, is here with us today. In 2004, this story was portrayed in the film Hotel Rwanda, and my father's name became known all over the world as a man of peace and virtue. In 2005, he was awarded the US Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor in our country. My father was given a platform, and he used it for good. He was critical of the increasing violations of human rights of Rwandans, calling loudly for democracy, freedom of speech and press, as well as truth and reconciliation for all Rwandans. This criticism turned him into a target of the Rwandan president, Paul Kagame. The campaign was targeted and brutal. Assassinations attempts against my father's life in Belgium, house break-ins and intimidation attempts. But my father was never intimidated because he knew that he had a responsibility to use his platform to be the voice for the silenced victims of the 30-year Rwandan dictatorship. President Kagame has called my father's kidnapping a flawless operation. It was flawless because Rwanda surveilled and tracked him in San Antonio, Texas, and publicly boasted about doing so. With the passage of the Robert Levinson Act of 2020, we hope that the new measures, like sanctions and denial of entry into the United States, will help prevent other families, American families, from being targeted like us. In February 2021, I was contacted by a collective of journalists called Forbidden Stories, working with Amnesty International and Citizen Lab on the Pegasus project. Their research on Rwanda and Pegasus gave them reasons to believe that I was being spied on. They asked to conduct forensics analysis on my phone, and I agreed. It was then discovered that that Pegasus surveillance had been used to target me. I was mortified, and I am terrified. The forensics reports have been presented to this committee, and they show that the spyware was triggered as I walked in with my mom into a meeting with the Belgian Minister of Foreign Affairs. It was active during the calls with the US Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs team and the US State Department, as well as US human rights groups. This surveillance is illegal under US law, and it allowed the Rwandan government to stay a step ahead as we fought to keep our father alive. I am told that my surveillance would cost the Rwandan government millions of dollars. Rwanda is the third most aid-dependent country in the world. Foreign aid makes up to 70% of national expenditure, and the US provided $160 million in aid to Rwanda last year. All of you, members of Congress, and American taxpayers themselves deserve to know how the government of Rwanda is spending humanitarian aid. Then 2 months ago, Citizen Lab also discovered that my cousin Jean-Paul Ntunzerumpa's phone had been infected. Jean-Paul and I live in the same house. Now 2 phones in the same household being targeted by the same software, by the same repressive regime. I am frightened by what the Rwandan government will do to me and my family next. It keeps me awake that they knew everything I was doing, where I was, who I was speaking with, my private thoughts and actions at any moment they wanted. Unless there are consequences for countries and their enablers which abuse this technology, none of us are safe. Thank you for letting me share my story and the story of my father, Paul Rusesabagina. I hope that if you find it useful in considering how to regulate the type of tools used to target my family and my father.